Hi, stock investors. JJ here. Welcome back. Well, what's with the slide in chip stocks? It's been happening. Quite a slide, quite a sudden slide. Is it overdone? We're going to get into that today. Going to go a bit more in depth than usual. Just one video on the channel today. Let's get straight into it.
Big moves in the semiconductor space today. Shares of NVIDIA, AMD, and Broadcom all closing sharply lower.
Look at that.
As well as equipment makers such as ASML.
Woo, that's a significant slide there. 10.21 for advanced micro, Broadcom 7.91, 8.61 for Qualcomm, NVIDIA down 6.62. Not used to seeing NVIDIA go down. Aren't we over the past, well, how long? Like a year, really? I think it's up 700% over a few years. Anyway, let's go.
As well as equipment makers such as ASML Holding and Lam Research. The moves come after two Bloomberg reports, one that says President Biden is considering harsher trade restrictions on the chips industry with selling to China, and the second, an interview with former President Donald Trump, where he implied that Taiwan isn't paying enough for U.S. military protection. Taiwan Semiconductor falling sharply too on that news. But a couple of U.S. chip players actually popped on the reports, including GlobalFoundries and Intel, both recipients of funding from the CHIPS Act, both domestic.
Okay, so it's politically driven. The slide, Donald Trump making comments there. He had an interview making comments, and there's a good chance, seems much more likely that it's going to be a Trump administration towards the end of this year. So people are really listening to what he's saying now, thinking that what he's saying is going to happen.
Domestic chip makers. Joining us to break all of that down is Bernstein Managing Director Stacy Rasgon. Stacy, welcome. How much of this has to do with former President?
So he's got a good record, this guy, so far as an analyst in recent years.
Trump's comments, and how much is partly reflected in the fact that GlobalFoundries and Intel really have not been performing as well as some of those other names?
Yeah, probably a lot of it is the Trump comments. And, if you read that interview, your first blind takeaway would be, well, he doesn't sound like he's as concerned about protecting Taiwan from China. Although if you read it, it doesn't really say that. It kind of says he doesn't want to do it for free. All right. This is not atypical. I'm kind of having flashbacks, to when he was president, and we'd be waking up and sort of seeing what the latest sort of policy by tweet was that day, and we're having a little bit of flashback.
That's true. He was a prolific tweeter when he was president, and the markets reacted to whatever he was tweeting. Sometimes he'd be tweeting at 2 or 3 in the morning, firing off tweets. I wonder if he's going to do that again.
To that, but it's not an atypical kind of statement from him, and I don't think he was saying protecting Taiwan is not important. I mean, it clearly is important, but it certainly did impact all of the semi companies that still depend on Taiwan for manufacturing. And
both Biden and Trump considering these restrictions to China. This seems to be why the stocks reacted.
Did, as you noted, see relative strength in more of the companies that have more of a U.S. focus, Intel, GlobalFoundries, even companies like Texas Instruments, I think today, that have a bigger U.S. footprint, I think on a relative basis, outperform. So that's kind of the dynamic that you saw with this.
Yeah, Taiwan getting the NATO treatment here, but it makes me wonder, given the run that we've seen in AI stocks and what a geopolitical issue that is, whether you're talking about China or you're talking about regulation and policy, how much volatility we have to be prepared for both overall and in the chips as President Trump's comments by the polling get more and more relevant.
Yeah, we'll probably have more volatility. We have that. It's during the 4 years when he was the president. Look, from a sell side standpoint, it was a target rich environment. There was always something to write about. There was always something that was going on that was moving stocks one way or the other. And yeah, we may be getting back into that again.
It could be. It's an interesting point. Is there going to be more volatility with the Trump presidency? He does react. He does fire off comments. Less considered, perhaps.
Again, for sure.
So is this a buying opportunity for any of the names across your coverage universe?
One thing I would note is on, you noted the semi caps, right? And ASML reported last night, but a lot of the U.S. names came down today. I think that was more on the Biden administration comments around potential tightening of the export controls. And what the Biden administration, at least from the news stories, was potentially suggesting is implementing something called the foreign direct product rule. Mm-hmm. Currently, they've already got export restrictions on the U.S. companies. They would like the foreign semi-cap companies to also participate, and they've been somewhat hesitant. And I won't go into what it is, but the foreign direct product would effectively enable the U.S. to apply similar kinds of constraints on the non-U.S. semicap companies. The thing is, that news does not really impact.
Okay, so constraints on the non-US companies. So this headline here that they've got, semi-slide on crackdown concerns. It reminds me of, China, when there was a crackdown on the tech companies in China that really affected the market, and then their economy started sliding, which wasn't really related to that, but the Chinese companies haven't really recovered from that. So whenever you see crackdown as a headline, it's not a great thing. It just shows you that the US is capable of crackdowns as similar to, and China is too.
Impact the U.S. guys. The U.S. guys are already impacted by this. They're already in China with one arm behind their back. What it would kind of do is kind of like level out the playing field between the U.S. players and the non-U.S. players. And so I didn't think there was any incremental bad news for the U.S. semicap players from at least the reports from the Biden administration.
Okay. So not so bad for Biden administration, but we'll have to see. It is looking far more likely that Trump will get in as president. We just don't know that. It's hard to predict. Anything can happen, but it's looking like that at the moment, and the market's reacting to that. So this next clip, the pullbacks in chip stocks, particularly ASML, is overdone, says Cantor Fitzgerald's Muse. Let's listen to this.
Muse, Cantor Fitzgerald, Senior Managing Director, joins us now. He has a buy rating on ASML, price target of $1,320. And says, despite geopolitical risks, focus on growth. All right, well, let's start off with the geopolitical risks if we can, CJ. What do you make of it? Both, the former president's comments about Taiwan and perhaps more importantly, what may be coming moves from the Biden administration to even try and tighten up these restrictions on China getting a hold of high-end chips.
Yeah, good morning. I think, the potential for more restrictions is real, but I would highlight that, we've already limited EUV, unavailable to China, and ASML, currently cannot service 5 different factories in China. And so the intent is really to limit China's ability to build leading edge semiconductors. And I think that the efforts the Department of Commerce, the BIS, have put through have done that. But clearly when you saw that 7 nanometer chip come out of Huawei in China, that led to the red flag. And so, I think
it's hard to see how they really limit China. Can they really limit China? Maybe temporarily, but China, as we've seen with their tech and the building, the quick building they do, it's hard to see how that could actually happen. But bringing more back to the US, Taiwan Semiconductor, of course, is an issue that it's all based in Taiwan. And if Trump inflames that or Biden inflames that, or China goes in there, then that could be problems. And you can see how quickly these stocks are reacting. 10% down for ASML on that day. It was pretty incredible. Big move.
I think there are considerations. It is bipartisan in D.C., but I would suggest that we've already done enough on that front. So I think the pullback in stocks, particularly ASML, is overdone.
Yeah, well, there it is, down 10%. Okay. I mean, again, in terms of the actual numbers reported by the company,
we'll see if that bounces back. To remind, this is not investment advice in any way. I'm not recommending any kind of to buy or sell any stocks at all. You need to seek your own advice, do your own work on these things, and as we can see, it can be volatile.
Generally positive, correct?
Yeah, I think that there was wide debate whether their bookings would come in at the kind of 4 billion level or upwards of 6 billion as we forecasted, and they came in right around 5.5. So that was definitely good enough.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. This one here, just the final clip here. The market demand for AI infrastructure is relentless, says CoreWeave CEO, and they're a company that is heavily involved in this, as we'll see. Let's get into this.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. As demand to power artificial intelligence applications is soaring, a New Jersey-based startup, CoreWeave, is rapidly building data centers across the United States and Europe. Joining us right now in an exclusive interview to talk about it is Mike Intrator.
So these data centers that are capable of AI, which some of the legacy ones are not. So these startups, this is an interesting one where there's a startup involved in this.
He is the co-founder and CEO of the company. Good morning to you. We're all trying to just understand, I mean, by the way, we just had this news from Trump, which I want to get your thoughts on, given the chip piece of this.
Yep.
But how quickly this market really is growing, what it really, really looks like, and I would actually even throw into this the energy it takes to power these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and the audience. In no particular order, the market that we are seeing, and we are very close to the true demand for this infrastructure, is relentless. It has been in a state of severe disequilibrium for the past 2.5 years. And in our planning and in the planning that we are being driven to do by our clients, there is quite a bit of runway still in terms of what the build is going to look like and how much capacity.
What does the runway look like to you?
Well, the runway looks like to us based on time, not on volume, right? And I always think about that from the perspective of a market that can't tell you how much they want, but will say, I want everything through this date, is a wildly out of balance.
So when people say, I want everything through this date, what is the date they give you?
Oh, so their planning cycles occur in, some companies in 9 months, some companies in a year, some companies are looking out even further than that. And they are basically pinned to, we don't have enough capacity to be able to train our models. We don't have enough capacity to be able to serve our models through inference. And so we are a company that is one of the few companies in the world that's able to bring on this kind of infrastructure at the scale that's required to actually make a difference.
Okay, so talking about AI, compute there, the demand for it, and that's kind of straight from the horse's mouth from people that are actually building it. CPU compute, GPU compute, the important one for AI, of course, cloud containers and virtual servers. And he's saying that there's a huge demand there, and it's really a constraint. They're saying build it. It takes time to build these things. You can't just build a data center overnight. So they're looking ahead to what's going to be happening with AI, and he's talking about the models, the AI models there. So I think we can guess which kind of companies, customers might be there, and new ones coming up as well using models.
Any concern or worry at all that one day, not that it's all going to stop, but somehow the science of it is going to shift insofar as right now you need to be training on more and more and more and more and more data. That's conceptually the idea. Do you ever think that it will actually either take less power to do this or less processing? I mean, the idea of being less processing power, and that there's going to be some moment where we go, oh my, there's a lot of overcapacity here.
So it's a good question.
Yeah, see, this is what happened during the dot-com bubble when fiber was laid. Great deal of fiber was laid, and then the crash came, and it was just overbuilt. Can that happen with AI? Is that possible? What he's saying there is, will be a time where it will be more efficient. We don't need all this compute for AI. It becomes somehow not so processor heavy here. Is that even possible that it's going to play out like that, and the power needed for that, which they haven't talked about?
Question. It's one we think about, right? Like, we're a small company, and we are a company that is competing against giants. Right. And so the consequences for getting out too far over your skis for a company like CoreWeave is catastrophic. And so the way that we try to do it is we try to focus on the long poles. Right. And so building the physical infrastructure at the data centers, securing the power, securing the mid-voltage transformers, things that take a long time to deliver, are things that we are willing to take on more risk with. And then the way that we handle our clients is that they come in and they request capacity from us. And so our exposure is limited to the long poles.
How hard is it for you to get?
Okay, there we go. So we're going to leave it there. I'm going to put links in the description to all these clips if you want to check out all of them in depth, especially this one. If you're interested in this one, you can see that more longer there. Also, I'm going to put a link on the screen to what YouTube thinks you should watch next, which could be one of mine, might be not, and a link to subscribe. Do like and subscribe if this is a relatively new channel. I'm doing news like this every day, reacting to the topics of the day. This chip slide is significant for today. So thanks to everybody for watching, and I will see you in the next one.